What's going on, UFC fans? I'm back here with another video here set for you guys. And yes, we have to have a talk about this. Talked about it a little bit on the subject of the most recent UFC pay-per-view that just got done, that being UFC 315. And on the feature fight on that card, we had Jose Aldo and what was, and well, a lot of people do believe, his retirement match from the UFC, possibly from MMA. I don't think he's going to be done in terms of maybe fighting. He may go back into boxing and to other things in terms of it being combat sports. But in reality, well, he's already been out of his prime. But in terms of being able to put those type of performances that he was beforehand in the three last fights that he had in the UFC, Jose Aldo got treated absolutely horrendously. The UFC should be ashamed of themselves of how they correspondingly matched make and made these things all upon how they take care of, they believe, the legends and all these things and what they talk about and all this nonsense. And it is absolutely, again, atrocious in how they treated one of the biggest stars and one of the biggest fighters of all time in featherweight, in bantamweight, that being Jose Aldo. Everybody knows his matchups that he had with Max Holloway. Obviously, the knockout with Conor McGregor, the thing that made him mostly famous. But before that, he was on like a 13 fight win streak. He hadn't had loss for like 6 or 7 years. And he was the king of Rio and the king of the featherweight division. No doubt about it. He was one of the greats of all time. And starting his return of him coming back into the UFC, they matched him up against Jonathan Martinez, who was on an absolute streak. I think he came off a TKO victory of Adrian Yanez of just absolutely murdering him with low kicks. And he had a matched up against a dude that is known for having one of the best low kick defenses regarding MMA and stand up, that being kickboxing and Muay Thai of all time, that being Jose Aldo. They put him against this dude, and Jose Aldo looked. He obviously, again, he's out of his prime, but a pretty much vintage performance of what we expect out of Jose Aldo. Pretty much just outclassing Jonathan Martinez out there on the feet, really doing things, especially getting those things down packed in terms of the skills that he was learning over time, just strictly doing boxing. I mean, his hands were looking a lot better, and he looked like a lot more of a complete fighter, especially on the feet, because Jose Aldo is known of having this Muay Thai type of background and style of fighting. And obviously that's great, but with the boxing and it lacking and having fights with Max Holloway and him having losses in those fights, it learned a lot more about how his striking and, again, just his hand game and especially his defense as well could be able to level up into better things. And while he absolutely outclassed somebody like a Jonathan Martinez, who at the time was ranked number 11, they immediately put Jose Aldo in there at number 8, where he was in at number 8, and then he was just below guys like Song Yadong, Davidson Figueiredo, who recently just got into the bantamweight division. I believe he won like 2 fights already. Henry Cejudo, Marlon Vera, who already Jose Aldo had a win over him beforehand, so I don't know why Marlon Vera was ranked above him. Corey Sandhagen, Marab, he lost to Marab, but his takedown defense and it being what it was and what Jose Aldo is known for, of being one of the best takedown defense type of fighters and not getting taken down to the ground whatsoever. He did the best job before Sean O'Malley got to Marab, really since then. And then after he gets the win with Jonathan Martinez, they match him up with Mario Batista. So the UFC and them thinking about, well, he's Jose Aldo, he's an older guy, he's a legend, we're kind of banking on him of getting out of the game. We're just going to give him this contract and have him match up with these dudes lower in the rankings and see if they can be able to test their ability against a guy like a Jose Aldo who has a big name and they can just get a name merchant off their resume against a guy like Jose Aldo. And unfortunately, a guy like Mario Batista actually did that. He did exactly what Merab Dvalishvili did against Jose Aldo, but even worse. Because honestly, yes, while it was very competitive on the feet, Jose Aldo was doing, in my opinion, the better work compared to Mario Batista, but it was very competitive. And once Mario Batista noticed that he was just a tick below of what Jose Aldo was doing on the feet, and he had to be able to negate something in some type of way, he Marabed his way into victory. And while, yes, everybody loves Marab as of right now because he beat Team Khabib and he beat Umar and stuff like that beforehand, and especially even now, people still hate on Marab just based off the way that he fights. His fighting style is not one for the eyes and it's not very entertaining, but it works for Marab. But when you see other fighters who are looking at this style or just looking for ways to be able to win and not really be entertaining and not actually getting out there and be an actual man and go out on your shield, they try to find ways to win that are just atrociously making you not want to be able to see any of the fights, and that's exactly what Mario Batista won. Mario Batista, in my honest opinion, the judges robbed Jose Aldo in that one. I think Jose Aldo deservedly so needed to be able to get that win. He did more work. He did more damage, especially on the feet. And whatever, they gave it to Mario Batista because he held him longer to the cage. And I don't know. I feel like you have to be able to get some type of points if you're not getting taken down and you're just keeping your ground. And yeah, dude is in dominant position, but he's not doing anything in terms of work. And speaking of that, and speaking of robberies, a lot of people are, especially since the dust has settled and a lot of things have died down ever since UFC 315. I've been hearing about a lot of people talking about how Ayman Zahabi, he looked a lot better, and people actually believe that he won the fight. Again, even since then, since my initial reaction from making that video, I wholeheartedly disagree. I really do believe Jose Aldo won that fight. I think he did the majority and better of the work, even though he got dominated in the last 2 minutes or the last 3 minutes in that third round where he completely gassed himself out after he just wanted to sprint to be able to get a finish towards the end where he literally looked like he was about to get this done against Ayman Zahabi. Besides that moment and maybe it being kind of competitive in the second round, there's no other way that I believe Ayman Zahabi won this fight. You can be able to give him the third round. You can't give him a 10-8 because he got knocked down, he got wobbled, he got hurt, he almost got finished in the beginning of that third round. You can give him a 10-9, and I don't see any way in shape or form from rewatching that second round with Ayman Zahabi and Jose Aldo. Ayman Zahabi won that round. Even though, yes, he was having some type of success, he was getting his timing down, he was starting to be able to get more of a flow in terms of the strikings, but I just think Jose Aldo just did better work. And I just think it's an injustice to what the UFC did to such a legend like a Jose Aldo, especially after knowing, they had this retirement package from Michelle Waterson, who is a WMMA fighter who, kind of a pioneer, but didn't really do anything or won anything of note in the UFC. And they do things for Anthony Smith, Lionheart, the Lionheart of Wizard of Oz, if he's anything. They didn't even have a retirement package for Stipe, and they pretty much known that he was done towards the end of his career against John Jones. And they did the same thing with Jose Aldo. You know that he's older, he doesn't really have much left in terms of his body. 38 years old, a lot of mileage in terms of so many fights and many wars that he's been in so far in his career. And the thought of not just having one just locked in the chamber for Jose Aldo, let's just put up a retirement thing for him just in case something happens. Nothing. And the matchups were absolutely horrendous. Ayman Zahabi, Jonathan Martinez, Mario Batista. You think these guys are worthy of getting a name like a Jose Aldo into the rankings and bumping themselves up? As soon as those dudes get into the top 10 and they face off against a guy like Song Yadong or Corey Sanhagen or Peter Yan, hell, maybe even a Cheeto Vera, who just pulled out of his fight against Mario Batista, unfortunately. But I think once they match up against dudes like that, I think they're probably going to get slept and they'll probably get back into the lower of the rankings. Jonathan Martinez is already out of the rankings as of right now. Last time out that he's got into a fight against Jose Aldo. Mario Batista, again, was scheduled with the fight for Chito Vera. Chito Vera just recently pulled out, unfortunately. And Ayman Zahabi is going to be, what, number 11, number 10 in the rankings now? And then who are you going to match up against him next? Henry Cejudo. Speaking of Henry Cejudo, how come you know that you have a legend in your bantamweight division? Why don't you match him up against legends? You could have matched him up against Dominic Cruz before Dominic Cruz retired, and unfortunately he got injured and he pulled out of his fight against Rob Font or whatever the case may be. But instead of getting a Rob Font fight against Dominic Cruz, why don't you put Jose Aldo against Dominic Cruz, who, are two legends of the sports, bantamweight GOAT in a lot of people's minds in terms of Dominic Cruz, featherweight GOAT, or close to being on the Mount Rushmore, or is on the Mount Rushmore of the featherweight GOAT, if we're being honest. That being Jose Aldo, match them up against each other. That would be, not a great fight, but I mean, two legends against, and they actually share the cage with each other, and you could put that on their resume. Henry Cejudo is another name. Him having double champ status, him being a big name, him being in one of the higher ranking positions in the bantamweight division. Him against Jose Aldo, even though they're older in both of their age. I mean, again, another two legends type of fight. During the time after you have Jose Aldo beat a name like a Jonathan Martinez, you had Umar Nurmagomedov at number 10. And I understand why giving the Umar versus Sandhagen thing, but if you really want a name on the resume for Umar, that's actually really impressive, where I think Aldo should have been higher than 8. I think he should have been at least 6 or 5 in the rankings, in my honest opinion. Why not match him up against Umar Nurmagomedov? Again, if you're going to be able to get somebody that's lower in the rankings, and you know that they may not be, having the greatest of resumes, they don't have a lot of names, you can put them against a legend like a Jose Aldo. Yes, there is a fair chance that Jose Aldo does pull it off, and if he does pull it off, why not just give him the title shot after that? He's a legend. He's a huge name. Who wouldn't want to be able to see that comeback story of an older legend type of guy, then going back into the rankings high up, and then actually contending for a title belt, instead of him just putting against dudes that are lower in the rankings that really don't have no name? At least Umar Nurmagomedov has the hype, or had the hype, beforehand, before beating Sandhagen and having the very close matchup against Merab. Dude, Jose Aldo on your resume, for sure you're going to be able to leapfrog a few other names. Jose Aldo versus Corey Sandhagen, even though that would have been, an incredible matchup in terms of what it would be in terms of hype, maybe like a Umar, but I mean, that's another great matchup that's never happened beforehand. Why not? I don't know, man. I just think it was completely unfair, unjustifiable, horrendous, atrocious, the way that the UFC treated the legend of Jose Aldo, and I think he deserved way more than what he got in his recent run in the UFC. Those are just my thoughts. Like this video if you obviously like this video. Comment your opinions on what you think about the UFC and how they did Jose Aldo. Do you agree with me that they did him dirty? I think they did him absolutely nasty, my brother. And subscribe. Subscribe, UFC fans, Jose Aldo fans. If you think that he got robbed in his last two fights that he had between Mario Batista and Ayman Zahabi, and you agree with me and you agree upon all the opinions, or just some of the opinions that I had on this video, I'm going to be making more videos or type of videos like this on my channel to be able to keep things going. You guys love it here, and I love that you guys are here, so why not stay here even longer? Thank you guys again for watching the video again, and peace.